Not with a child at home, not on your salary.
Tonight it happened just as I wrote. It's not a hypothetical.
Do as I say, Mr. Bell, or quit. Walk out that door tonight, and I'll know what to believe.
I've got a daughter, Tessa. I need this job more than you know. If the price is lying to those people, I'll walk out that door tonight. I won't lie to keep a roof over her head. She'd know. Kids always know.
The cardboard box was still flat under the boardroom table when Mara Quinn told the single father across from her that he would never really walk out that door. She said it the way people say things they have never once been wrong about. Calm, certain, a little bored. 5 executives sat around the long glass table on the 42nd floor of the Ardent Building, and every one of them had watched her win harder arguments than this. Rain hammered the tall windows behind her, turning the whole city into smeared silver light, and somewhere below, the storm was already loosening the things this tower depended on. "You won't quit, Mr. Bell," she said. "Not with a child at home, not on your salary. So let's stop performing and get to the real problem." Rafe Bell looked at her for a long second. Then he reached under the table, pulled out one of the flattened archive boxes the legal team had left behind, and began folding the bottom flaps into place. That was the moment Mara Quinn stopped talking. 3 hours earlier, Rafe had been eating a cold sandwich in his truck on level P4, because the spots near the elevators were reserved for people whose names were printed on office doors. His name was not printed anywhere. He was 42, broad through the shoulders, usually tired, and he had spent 7 years as the facilities supervisor for the Ardent Building. 38 floors of offices, elevators, boilers, water mains, and roughly 800 people who only thought about any of it when something stopped working. He was also raising his 9-year-old daughter, Tessa, alone. His wife had died 4 years earlier, after a sickness that gave them almost no time to get used to the idea of it. Since then, every morning ran the same. Tessa's hair braided with the help of a video he'd watched so many times he no longer needed the sound. A cold sandwich eaten alone in the dark of the garage, and the notebooks, a battered stack of them in a drawer, where he kept everything the building had ever tried to teach him. He was never late, not once in 7 years. The people who worked beside him knew the quiet cost behind that one small fact. Rafe knew the Ardent the way you know a house you grew up in. He knew Boiler 2 ran hot after dark and needed the line bled by hand. He knew which pump on the roof was one bad season from failing, because he'd written it down, dated it, and sent it upstairs more than once. None of it lived in a manual. It lived in his head, and in those notebooks, and in the way his crew called him, instead of panicking when a main let go at lunchtime. In a 38-floor building, attention was the only thing standing between an ordinary Tuesday and a catastrophe. Nobody upstairs saw it, because the whole point of his work was that when he did it right, nothing happened at all. Then Vantage Holdings bought the tower and installed 2 things: a chief executive named Mara Quinn and a cost-cutting director named Preston Vance. Preston discovered something wonderful about Rafe's team. They never failed. So he began to ask why a team that never failed needed to be so large. He cut 2 positions across the year and called it efficiency, and on the reports, it looked exactly like that. The same building, running on fewer people, the numbers trimmed clean. What the reports did not show was that Rafe had absorbed the missing men into his own hours, that he now worked the overnight bleed himself, that some nights the safety walk did not get finished at all. So Rafe wrote it down, the way he wrote everything down. He filed a memo in November with a photograph of the roof pump and a single line at the bottom. "This will fail in a hard freeze, and I will not have the men to contain it." Preston filed it somewhere Mara would never look, and told her the facilities department was a model of the new efficiency. Mara believed him, because the numbers were beautiful. and because she had stopped believing men in gray work shirts a long time ago. Then the storm came. It came on a Thursday, the kind of freeze the forecasters had been circling all week, and it came with wind that drove the rain sideways against the glass. By 4 in the afternoon, the water main pressure was climbing on the basement gauge, and the roof pump, the one from the photograph, was making a sound Rafe had heard exactly once before, on the worst night of his early career. He called it up the chain. He called Preston. Preston was on 42, presenting the year's savings to Mara Quinn herself, and he did not take the call. So Rafe did what he had always done. He went to the source. He took the service elevator as high as it ran, and the stairs the rest of the way, and shouldered the roof door open into a wind that tried to take it back from him. The cold met him like a wall. Out there the rain had turned to needles, and it found the back of his neck and ran down inside his collar, and the wheel of the feed valve was a ring of iced metal that stole the feeling from his fingers the moment he touched it. He set his weight against it anyway. He shut the feed by hand, then bled the pressure the slow way, the only way. A quarter turn and a wait, a quarter turn and a wait, while the cold crept up past his wrists and into the long bones of his forearms. The pump strained under him. He counted. He waited. And then, slowly, the sound dropped. From the high grinding note he had prayed against, down to the low labor a building can survive. He stood there a moment in the dark and the wind, hands he could no longer feel, and let himself breathe once. Then he went down, soaked to the skin, to tell them the part he could not fix alone. He did not mean to make a scene. He came to say the pump was holding, but the line needed a crew before morning, and there was no crew, because Preston had cut it. He stood dripping in the doorway of that bright glass room, and 8 faces turned to look at him the way you look at a puddle spreading toward a good rug. Preston recovered first. "Rafe, this isn't the time. Log it and I'll review it Monday." "There won't be a Monday for that line," Rafe said. "It'll freeze solid tonight. When it thaws, it'll split. If it splits, the water finds the electrical on 3, and then we're not talking about repairs. We're talking about 800 people and a fire I can't reach." Mara Quinn set down her pen. "And who exactly are you?" "He's facilities," Preston said quickly. "Supervisor. This is precisely the kind of alarmism I've been streamlining out of the culture. Everything he's describing is a hypothetical." Rafe looked at Preston for a moment. Then he reached into the wet chest pocket of his shirt and laid a folded sheet of paper on the end of the long table. The ink had run at one corner, but the date was clear, November, and the line at the bottom was still readable. "This will fail in a hard freeze, and I will not have the men to contain it." "It's not a hypothetical," Rafe said quietly. "I told you in November. I've got the photographs. You filed them. Tonight, it happened exactly the way I wrote it would. I fixed the part a man can fix alone. I can't fix the part you cut." The room went very still. Rain slid down the tall windows. Mara did not pick up the paper yet. She had built a career on reading a room in a single breath, and what she read now did not match the reports on her tablet. She saw a man who was not asking for anything. She saw the way her own executives would not meet his eyes, and she saw Preston's hand drift, just slightly, toward the folded page, as if to take it back off the table. "Sit down, Mr. Bell," she said. "I'd rather stand. I'm wet." Something crossed her face then, not amusement, closer to respect. "Then stand, but you'll stay. Preston, pull the facilities file. The real one. Every memo, every headcount change, every safety report for 18 months. Now." Preston smiled the way people smile when the floor has begun to tilt. "Mara, there's no need to derail the presentation over one excitable." "Now, Preston." And here was the thing about a woman who had clawed her way up from a single leased room. She knew the exact sound of a man managing her. She had used it herself 1,000 times on people who trusted her too easily. Hearing it now, aimed at her own ear, made her go very cold and very quiet inside. Preston did not pull the file. He stalled. He talked about optics and quarterly targets, and the danger of rewarding alarmism, and with every word, Rafe simply stood there, dripping, patient, until the contrast between the two men filled the room like weather. That was when Mara reached under the table, to the stack of flattened archive boxes the legal team had left behind, and slid one across the glass toward Rafe. "Before I read a word," she said, and her voice had gone flat and hard, "let's settle the thing everyone in this building believes. You've run a department on half its crew for a year, without a single failure, and you've never threatened to leave. Preston tells me people like you don't leave, that you can't afford to. So do as I say, Mr. Bell, or quit. Tell me you'll walk out that door tonight and never come back, and I'll know whether to believe a word on that page." She meant it as a test. She had used it before, on men who folded, on men who begged. She was certain she knew how it ended. Rafe looked at the flat box she had pushed toward him. Then he pulled it the rest of the way, set it on the table, and began to fold the bottom flaps into place, one over the other, the way you do when you are about to clean out a desk. "I've got a daughter named Tessa," he said, folding. "She's 9, her mother's been gone 4 years. Every morning I braid her hair off a video I don't need the sound for anymore. I need this job more than you can guess, ma'am. More than Mr. Vance thinks he understands." The tape screamed as he pulled a strip from the dispenser and sealed the seam. "But I stood on that roof tonight, with numb hands, because if I hadn't, 3 floors could have gone up, while 800 people took the stairs in the dark. I did that for free, off the clock, wet to the skin, because it's mine. The building is mine, even when the paycheck says it belongs to you." He set the taped box upright and looked at her. "So, if the price of keeping this job is standing here and telling those people it's fine, that Mr. Vance cut the right corners, that nothing's wrong, then yes, I'll fold my box. I'll walk out that door tonight. Because I won't lie to keep a roof over my kid's head." She'd know. Kids always know. Nobody moved. The taped box sat between them like a verdict. Mara Quinn had watched men fold before, and it had always looked like weakness. This was the first time it had ever looked like the opposite. She picked up the running ink memo. She read it. Then she turned to Preston and held out her hand, and this time she did not ask. "The file, all of it, on my tablet in 2 minutes, or security walks you to the garage." It took her 11 minutes to read what Preston had spent a year hiding. The 2 positions cut, the overtime Rafe had never claimed, the safety walks logged as complete, on nights when one man could not possibly have finished them, and the memo, dated, photographed, the plain sentence at the bottom that had come true that very night while Preston stood there calling it alarmism. When she finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the storm had begun to ease, the way storms do once the worst of them has passed. "Preston," she said, "you told me this department was a model of efficiency. It was. The numbers were beautiful, because this man paid the difference out of his own body. You didn't make the building leaner, you made it fragile, and you hid the invoice." She turned her tablet face down on the glass. "You're done. Clear your office tonight. And before you tell yourself I'm being sentimental, understand what I saw here. I saw you reach for his memo to take it off the table. You've known for months. That's not cost-cutting. That's gambling, with 800 lives to make your slides prettier." She did not raise her voice. She never did. "Security's downstairs. They'll see you out." Preston left the way men leave when the room they built has decided against them. Nobody watched him go. Then Mara turned to Rafe Bell, and for the first time all evening she looked, not like a chief executive, but like a woman who had just caught herself in a mirror she didn't like. "Sit down," she said, "please. And this time it's not an order." He sat. She looked at the box he had taped shut, the one meant to carry out his life, still sitting there between them. "I built a rule for myself 20 years ago," she said slowly, "that people always stay for money, and so the kindest thing I can do is control the money and keep them close. I called it generosity, keeping people needing me. Tonight you folded that box to tell me I was wrong to my face." She was quiet a moment. "You just reminded me of something at the worst possible price." Rafe said nothing. He had never been good at the part where someone thanked him. "So here's what happens now," she went on, and the executive came back into her voice, but a truer version of it. "You're not carrying that box anywhere. You're going to open it, pull out a clean sheet, and write me the department you need. The crew you should have had all along. The overtime you never claimed, paid back. The safety standards you'd set if no one over your head could bury them. You write the terms, Mr. Bell, in your own hand, and I'll sign them tonight before either of us goes home, because I've spent a year trusting the wrong man's numbers, and I'd like to try trusting the right man's. Rafe looked at the taped box for a long moment. Then he took his pocket knife, slit the seam he had just sealed, and opened it back up. From inside his damp notebook, he tore a clean page. He wrote for 20 minutes while the rain thinned to nothing against the glass. He wrote the roofline that still needed a crew before morning. At the top, underlined. He wrote the positions back. He wrote fair overtime and a standard that no director could file away in the dark. He did not ask for a raise for himself. He asked for one for the newest man on his crew, the one still learning the building on his knees. When he slid the page across the glass, Mara read it, and at the bottom, where a man might have written his own reward, she found the other man's name instead. She read it twice. Then she looked up from the page to the man who had written it. Really looked, the way she had not looked at anyone across that table in a very long time, and studied his hands, still red from the cold, resting flat and patient on the glass. Something in her face had changed for good. She signed it. Then she made a call, in front of him, and a crew was on the roof before midnight. The line held. The freeze came, and the thaw came, and the split never happened, because for once the man who had written the warning had the people to answer it. 800 workers came in Monday morning and thought about none of it, which was exactly the measure of the thing done right. Rafe got home far later than usual. Mrs. Okafor, his neighbor, had kept Tessa long past their hour and would not take a cent for it. The girl was asleep on the couch under a blanket, her half-finished braid come loose against the cushion. He carried her to bed the way he did every night, and stood in her doorway a moment longer than he needed to, the way you do when you have remembered, out on a freezing roof, exactly what it is you are working for. He kept his job on his own written terms. He kept his crew. He kept the standard, on paper, where no clever man could hide it again. And Mara Quinn kept the memo with the running ink. She had it framed, not for the boardroom, but for the wall behind her own desk. Every dawn she came in early. She laid her hand flat against the glass over that one blurred line and its date, and read it once before the day began.